So we're talking a lot about the issues in the world. We could be a little bit optimistic as well.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why you're all here. You all came up with interesting ways to deal with some of these problems, being creative, collaborating with one another. That's why we're all here, and hopefully we can work on more projects in the future. Let's be optimistic for a second. And what do you guys think is needed? In broad terms,
Yeah, I think just to connect to this and what you said, I feel like in general it's never a lack of information. People have it's more like the abundance of information. And I think in general, in all the topics, it's always the same thing. It's more like there is too much of things, which actually you struggle to narrow it to a point. And I feel like maybe for us, to be very optimistic, I really think it's always about trying to demystify whatever it is. If it's about sustainability, come on, it's not an art thing at the end. You were talking about this, you put a tree if you remove one, and I think it's the same thing with recycling and everything. It's just, and sometimes I feel we focus. It's very personal opinion here, and you can say to me I'm wrong. But most of the time, I think recycling is not even the solution. We should stop thinking of recycling. It's more before this then, because I see so many people being stressed in their workplace, being where should I put my plastic? Is in the green or the red bin? And they get stressed about this, and just well, the problem is before this. Why do you use
such low hanging fruit?
Exactly, absolutely. And I feel most of the time when we're talking about information and media. And the problem is the media is curating the way they're doing things, but at the end you realize it's because it's a bigger person who take control of the media and do this. And I just feel at a certain point it's a bit well, what can we do about this? It's almost you let this on their side, and we try to build something together, but it's an art thing to do, right? And I really like the example of Extinction Rebellion, and you might agree with them or not, and the way they are doing things. But I really like this example as a real social movement, and I don't think sometimes it's just about environmental sustainability. Again, it's personal, but I really think environmental sustainability should come after social sustainability. If you start to think about the people, then the people will be able to think about the planet.
I don't think Extinction Rebellion I think I like a lot of their points. I like their message, but I think. Some of the people that say they're connected to the movement, I think they don't think about other commuters or other people in the UK who might not be a part of them. You want to save the planet, but you got to make everyone else happy as well. You can't just be jumping on buses and
exactly.
I saw videos of people doing weird voodoo movements but in the middle of a roundabout, and it's look, people have to go to work, earn money. You can't just be doing things like that.
Be clever.
Be clever with your movement,
Absolutely.
and I think it's been taken to a completely different spectrum, and I think people have lost focus of what the message actually is, which is sad. But
because it's angry people coming in, that they all have their point of saying something, and then you have a general message which is completely blurry. You don't know what it's about at the end.
Pretty much.
I think one thing that's interesting about Extinction Rebellion though is that they're very self-aware that they're privileged enough to protest a lot of the stuff. So they're if you can, if you have the privilege to do this, because that is another thing. With all these protests and with all of being able to tackle climate change, you mentioned about the social kind of issues, is that the reality is not everyone is in a position to be able to think about this. You're living your day-to-day life trying to get through. And I do see your point that they're making it a lot harder for other people, but then
I wanted to go to the rally just to see what it was like, but I wasn't able to go because I had work. So it's even though people agree with the message, not everyone can afford to take the time out of the day to be a part of the movement. And it's but the people who are part of the movement don't see that. A lot of them, well, not everyone, but a vast majority of them.
I think they are. I think they are. Like you said, I think they are quite aware. And I think because sometimes it is difficult. It's because I think with a lot of Extinction Rebellion, it's not they've thought, right, okay, oh gosh, there's this, climate change is happening. Wait, we need one solution. First solution is let's cause this civil disobedience. Realistically, they've been doing stuff for the past 30 years, and the problem is the government and stuff haven't been haven't listened. And what's sad is that it's, you know, because realistically, if the case could be that you could hold a meeting or you could write to your MP, and if they listen and then change happens, then, because realistically, like Extinction Rebellion, they'd rather spend their day doing something else rather than, you know, like sitting on the road. But realistically, I think, unfortunately, to get listened and to be able to then have a meeting, you know, because before those big protests, a lot of people hadn't even heard of Extinction Rebellion, and they, you know, I think had that wasn't their first thing. They've been trying to do stuff for 30 years, and then it's a sad. I think that's a sad reflection of our so-called democracy. That in order to get, you know, meetings with government, in order to kind of get the ball rolling, that they've had to do civil disobedience, and because then like you said, then you have that offset where people get annoyed and stuff, which is difficult because it's tricky.
It's a fine line, but I think if they're going to do some sort of rallying or trying to get the attention of Parliament, do it outside of Parliament. A lot of them are literally on a roundabout in the middle of Brixton, and it's like come on, man.
What often happens?
Find like a good location to do it at, and then keep going at it. Whereas.
You could. I think sometimes
you could argue.
You could argue that often, like, unfortunately, when it's all about kind of growth and profits, often people listen when where they get hit hard the most, where they're losing money. But I agree with you. But I think everyone in Extinction Rebellion would agree that if the case could be that you just go outside Parliament and you know, nothing gets disrupted, and then you get listened to, and then it's taken really seriously. It's like, right, what are we going to do? That would be, I agree, that would be ideal. But unfortunately, I think the reality is it's only where, you know, that's why you have trade unions, and that's why people strike, because unfortunately, when it's all about growth and profits, that people listen when money starts, when the economy starts losing money, which is a sad reality at the moment. And then you could argue that this is what should potentially be changing rather than.
I can see in 50 years, so this guy called Dixon Esponier, and he kind of talked about the third industrial revolution. In 50 years, it's going to be so different. We're going to be living up here. There's going to be water down here, and then it's just going to be some technology world. It'd be cool. I'm very excited.
Gosh.
I think the risk with that, because they're talking about everyone moving higher up, but then it will be the elite that are higher up, and then everyone's lower down. So you just get a physical divide, and it's like a lot of the dystopian films and stuff, isn't it?
Pretty much. Like Metropolis or something like that.
The thing is as well, like the Western world, we can build up and we can survive this climate change, but you know, going back to Africa and the Middle East, they are so deprived of their economy. They'll be the ones that suffer first off when this starts to happen. So it's like, although we're looking inwards and building new technologies and looking to adapt to the way the world is changing, are we in fact neglecting half of our population? We need to focus on that first, perhaps.
Very similarly, so obviously vertical farming, the place I went to, they grow produce, great, but then they sell their produce in Marks and Spencer's and Ocado and these other places, but because it's vertical farmed, they up the price. And it's because the food tastes so good, they up the price. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but we are just living in a capitalist society, and then although the person who started it to shorten food security or shorten mileage of transporting produce, it's at this point in time, it's expensive for people to go out and buy that produce until it gets to the point where it's as cheap as, let's say, produce that comes from China or produce that comes from India. We're still going to be living in a capitalist society, and it's going to take a while for that to change, I think.
And on your point, about how we kind of think about ourselves and not so much about Africa, all of this climate agreement about this 2-degree temperature rise that's dropped to 1.5 saves the Western world, but it completely destroys so many. Africa's going to be the worst hit continent, and I can't remember his name sadly, but I went to a talk by him, and he essentially flagged us up, because the G20 summits and everything, I think there was maybe one leader from Africa that was present, and then just this thing signs away. It's a bit like Trump signing away women's rights.
Exactly.
It's oh yeah, cool, we'll agree to 2 degrees, and then it's oh yeah, we've literally agreed to the death sentence of millions of people on this other continent.
Shocking.